Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and in this video, I'm going to hopefully take this Erikenstein rod, which is already cool, and try to make it just a little bit cooler. So originally, my intention for this project was going to be my entry into the Weber Brothers custom contest, and I kind of ran out of ideas on this. When I started, I had delusions of grandeur of what I was going to do with it, and it didn't really pan out the way I wanted it to. And I decided to just go ahead and do it as a regular build. I've got this 3D printed engine I got from Benchworks Toys, and I just thought it would look kind of cool sticking out. So I'm going to do a wheel swap, paint job, add a few things to it, but I wasn't going to go crazy with it at this point because I was a little discouraged with my lack of, let's say, imagination, let's call it. Here I'm kind of playing around with some wheels. I'm not going to end up using these because they were too small. The problem with this casting is the back wheels are very large originally, and they look good. So from a size perspective, you want to try to get, or I wanted to try to get something that was fairly close to what was on it originally, but not the plastic tires. So I was kind of playing around with those, and then I had some gold ones that really worked out well from a size perspective, so I decided to use those. And the front ones fit perfectly as far as width went, but the back ones, the axle on the tires and rims that I had was just too narrow. So in order to fix that, I have to make an axle tube and then set that down a little in the frame, because when you use an axle tube, it's wider than the channel for the axle from the factory. And well, it's actually double. So in order to do that, you just got to groove it out a little bit and make it so that it sits the way you want it to, because otherwise, you know, if you were going to lower it, that's great, but I was keeping the front the same, so I needed to make this, you know, so that it wasn't squatting in the back. Just brass tubing. I have piano wire that I use to fit things and make sure that there's no obstructions in the tube and both holes are clear. Then I will make a little bit of a groove in two places on it. And what I do that for is because when I put my original or my axles for the wheels I'm going to use in, they're two pieces. So this allows me to put a little bit of dab of glue in there and secure the axles once I've inserted them. Pretty simple. It's not nothing hard. It just makes my life a lot easier, and I don't have to worry about gluing my tires to the actual axle tube itself. So really, every video I pretty much do it. It seems like every video, every casting, I have to make some form of axle tube. So here you can see I'm kind of just grooving it out a little bit, just going to make it a little bit wider so it sits down, and then actually groove out a little bit of the channel. Once you do that, though, sometimes the interior part, if it overhangs the back or the front, if you're doing it in the front, you just have to trim it down a little bit so it clears, because now it's a little higher than what it was when it came out of the box. So this one was real easy, piece of cake. The engine, it's a shame, but I have to cut the transmission off, and I end up cutting the exhaust off to get it to fit. When I cut the one on the original casting, I try to cut it far enough that A, I can reuse it in something else, and B, I have enough clearance for the motor I want to put in there. This takes some fitting. It's not something that just pops together. Part of my problem on this is the engine is a little bit wider with the valve covers than the actual hole in the hood. So in order to make that a little bit better, aside from the clearancing things I'm doing right now, I actually had to use a file and file out the opening in the hood on 3 sides, the 2 sides in the front, just to get it so that it sits nice. Otherwise, it was going to sit too low. And then when you put the engine in, the chassis, then put the body on, it was sticking up too high. So I just have to widen it out a little bit. It wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't really need that much. So there you can kind of see what I'm doing. Then for the exhaust, do not do this. I'm drilling a hole in the exhaust on the original chassis. I'm getting it started. Yes, I am using my finger behind it. But once I get it started, then I'll put it down and drill all the way through. But it is possible that you could drill all the way through the first time and put a hole in your finger, which I've done multiple times, and I refuse to learn my lesson. So now I want to make an exhaust using the hole that I drilled on each side. I'm using some sculpting wire and brass tubing and some ferrules to kind of just make the exhaust go down the door and then kind of angle up in front of the rear tires. I just thought that looked kind of cool. I probably could have just come straight out, but with that little tab for the aero dam on the side right before the rear tire, there really wasn't a good way to bring the exhaust out at that point unless I cut that off or drilled a hole in it. I just didn't like the way it looked. So I decided to just kind of make my own faux exhaust that's going to come up and just run right in front on an angle in front of the rear wheels. And considering how big they are, I think it actually works really well. Then I made a spoiler for the back. Right now I just got it held on with some Loctite tack. I will glue it on after. Then obviously I need to cut the back window because I don't like that. I don't even know what it's supposed to be, an inlet for air, but it's just molded as part of the windshield. So I cut that off because we don't really need it, and I just think it looks stupid. It's probably the only part of the original casting I kind of don't care for. It's not a deal breaker, but it's not something I'm a fan of. So I cut that down. So it's still a sunroof, still a front window. But other than that, so speaking of that rear spoiler, I've glued it on now. And just to seal the back a little bit, I'm going to use some Vallejo plastic putty. This stuff's awesome to work with. It's thin, and it just fills gaps really nice. So I just put in a really thin bead on the back, and then I'll smooth it out. And once it's dry, which really didn't take that long, I'll take some fine sandpaper and just smooth it out, that little extra bit. I mean, obviously a screwdriver is not it's not a piece of sandpaper, but you can only do so much with it being wet. So the more you can do now to smooth it out, the easier it is for yourself when you get to the sandpaper part of it. And really with the sandpaper, I just kind of folded a piece in half and used the folded edge. It worked out perfect. Now it's just priming everything between gray and black primer. I kind of go back and forth, depends on what I'm doing. The body I did gray. Now I'm going to paint it metallic galactic silver and then seductive cherry, which is really kind of purple. I like the tropical glitz paints, but I was surprised. I expected it to be a little bit more red. I did a couple sample things with it. It's definitely more on the let's just say it's right on the edge of purple, but it is a cherry color, and I do like it. I just really expected something a little deeper red. But I'm half colorblind anyway, so who knows? Excuse me. Now it's just a matter of this thing has so much detail on the interior piece that's molded in. You could spend hours just painting the interior, but there's a lot you can do, and you can't see half of it, but it does look pretty cool when you're putting it together. And then I'm just doing the engine. I will clear coat that as well as the body, and overall, that really was about it. I had a little panel liner here, did some headlights, taillights, nothing fancy. Again, this ended up just being kind of a quick build. You can kind of see the exhaust there. I just got to trim up the back window, put it all together, put the screws in. And other than that, this really was a very simple build. I still wish I would have found a little glimpse of imagination to make this thing so much better so I would enter it, but I'm not going to enter this. I don't think it's up to par for a contest, but I do like it. It did come out great. It's different. It's something that I don't do all the time on the, I'll usually cut more and mash more than one vehicle together. But this was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I like this casting anyways. It's one of my favorites out of all their newer castings that have been out in the last 10 years. Just there's a lot to work with. I've seen these things 1,000 different ways, and I really haven't seen a bad one yet. So again, it's one of those fun castings that if you want to do Gaslands or you just want to do a custom, whatever you want to do, this is a perfect custom for that application. And really anything you do with it looks great. So if you're looking to get into customizing, this is one of those castings it's pretty basic and simple and just looks cool no matter what you do. So I hope you guys liked it. Maybe you got a little bit of inspiration, maybe some ideas, maybe not, maybe you think it sucks, whatever. But I hope you did enjoy the video at least, and I kept you semi-entertained. I will catch you on the next one.